Hi, good evening. Welcome to this webinar where I'll be talking to you about the digital transformation that's happening across and why you would need a robust framework to support the IT services. My name is Parameshwaran. Call me Param. I am based out of Bangalore, India. And let me first wish you all a very, very happy new year. Okay? A brief about me. I have about 25 years of IT experience. Worked with leading companies like SmithKline Beecham Pharmaceuticals, and then I worked on the retail, a top-notch retail organization where I have delivered IT services and I went into a lot of projects and so on. And then I moved into oil and gas before getting into training. Training. So I'm now independent and speaker, coach. I'm associated with Cognixia, and I'm a triple ITIL expert. When I say triple ITIL expert, what it means is it takes about 22 credits, 22 credits to become an ITIL expert. I have about 67 credits. And I'm a PMP certified. I'm a Scrum Master. I'm into DevOps and other areas. Well, and my core is on IT service management. I have been delivering a lot of training to a lot of multinational companies and a lot of repeat programs I do. So that's me. So address me as Param. Okay, and I'm associated with Cognixia. Cognixia is world's leading digital talent transformation company. Yeah, they're into machine learning, microservices, robotics, Internet of Things, big data. All this are helps in digital transformation. Yeah, they are an award-winning training center in the arm of Collabora. 130,000 professionals have been trained worldwide. Delivered training in over 45 countries, and 7,000 industry veterans and instructors are there, and 450 customers across the globe. So they are partnering with Red Hat, PeopleCert, Axelos, Microsoft, and so on. Right. Right. So we're going to talk about ITIL. ITIL has been there. What we're going to talk about is what is ITIL? How has ITIL evolved, and what's new in ITIL 4? And I'm just going to take you across of the concepts that that goes into ITIL 4. And then I'll take up the questions and answers. Yeah, right. So ITIL is this is what I'm going to do, this approach that I'm going to talk about, and also talk about roadmap for ITIL 4 certification. Then we will conclude, we'll take question and answers. All right. Right. So ITIL is not new. It all started in 1980s. ITIL stands for, it's an acronym. It stands for Information Technology Infrastructure Library. Yeah, and it all started with British government. They said that there's the level of quality IT service being delivered is not sufficient, it's not up to the mark. So they wanted a framework. So the British government started this, and you have this, it's called library. Why is it called library? Because it has 36 volumes of IT service management, provision for IT service management. Imagine 36 volumes. Yeah, so 36 volumes, people did not have that much of time to go through it and then implementing it. So it really did not take off. Then we came with the version 2, where all this it brought down to 6 books, and another version, that is the second edition of ITIL 2002, ITIL V2 second edition. They brought down to 2 books, that is service support and service delivery, and they discussed a lot of processes and functions. And you're all familiar with a process called incident management, problem management, change management. Not many contributors have contributed towards it, consultants, practitioners, and lot our top companies, especially HP, HP and IBM, they showed very, keen interest, and they started refining the processes. Yeah, so that's how that a lot of the refining happened in incident management, problem management, and other processes. And ITIL was called as a best practices, right? Yeah, and a lot many organizations started implementing ITIL in their organization because it was delivering value to the customers. There was a return on investment. Right? See, the framework is available in the public domain. Yeah, you don't have to pay for the framework, and you need to pay for the tools, right? So that makes it a bit expensive. It's all to do with the tools, right? So ITIL V2 became quite popular. But then, if it is so very popular, then why go for V3? I'm just giving you a roadmap of how ITIL has come along, to ITIL 4 now. So V3, why do you want to go for a V3 when V2 is good, isn't it? Now, what has happened is the process and everything were quite matured in the second edition of V2, but then it was not properly organized. Right, so they brought in the concept of ITIL service life cycle. Life cycle concept is what they brought in ITIL V3, where if you look at this particular wheel, you see that you have ITIL, you have service strategy, you have service design, you have service transition, you have service operation. Can you see that? All are called life cycle stages. And the process like incident management, they just lifted that incident management process and put it into operation life cycle stage, because incident happens in operations, right? And they picked up change management, they put it into transition. And then problem management, yeah, you come across problem management like incident management, no? So they put it into service operations. Financial management for IT services, they put it into service strategy. Then you need to design, isn't it? You need to design for IT services, right? In terms of availability, capacity, continuity, security, and so on, right? Isn't it? So it occupied the service design life cycle stage. And if you see the continual improvement, the gray border that you get to see, it sits as a wrap. It sits as a wrap on all the life cycle stages. That means improvement is there in all the life cycle stages, including continual improvement, isn't it? So that's how it went to V3. And except for bringing in continual improvement and couple of processes, the processes, what it was in V2 was untouched. They just lifted it and put it into a different slot. What is life cycle? Life cycle is everything starts. Something has to start. It's a starting date and it has got an end date, isn't it? So yeah, it's everything has got that. Like for example, project has got a start time and an end time. Similarly, product has got a start time and an end time. Similarly, the framework, for life cycle stages. So everything starts. Something it has to starts off with a strategy, and it goes along the life cycle stages. So we human beings also have life, isn't it? Life cycle from birth to death or cradle to grave. So that is the life cycle concept where it was very well organized. And once again, it became very popular, and ITIL was not a good practice, but a best practice, right? And not many companies were very much benefited implementing ITIL. Cost effective, reduce cost, managing risk, managing budget, and all other things, But this approach was a waterfall approach. Waterfall approach, or traditional way of doing it. I want you to understand this approach, and then I'm going to talk about agile approach. The agile approach is what ITIL 4 is all about. Blend. Actelos has brought in the ITIL 4. They brought in this concept of agile, bringing in agile, hybrid. You can say waterfall and agile. Now let's understand what agile is. Just a sec, please. Just a sec. Sorry about it. The presentation is still in the first slide. I have not navigated to other slides. So this one I got from one of the organizers. So yeah, I'm just talking about ITIL. Okay, so I'm just giving you an example of life cycle stage. I'm just giving you an example of a waterfall approach as well as what is agile. Now, it's very important for you to understand what a waterfall approach is, right? So the waterfall approach is everything starts with a strategy, isn't it? If you want to come up with a new idea, I mean, if you want to come up with a new services, new product, and something, you need to strategize. You need to think about, hey, what is it? Is it really worth going for this new product or a service? Who are the customers who's going to be interested in this product or a service, and what is the value that they are going to get? And do we have the competency in delivering this product or a service? Isn't it? And what is the budget? What is the risk? And all of the things. You need to take a call. You need to take a call to know whether should you go for a new product or a service. So that happens in strategy. Guidelines and everything happens. Policies and everything comes from strategy. Output of this will go to service design and other life cycle stages. Right now, service design is the next stage. I'm explaining this waterfall approach. Now, what will happen is in service design, you spend a lot of time in designing. There will be a lot of meetings with the stakeholders. You need to identify the stakeholders. You need to, get a lot of inputs from the stakeholders. You need to understand the big. Only then it can go to transition. Only then the output of design, what is called as a service design package, will go as an input to transition. In transition, you will start developing the product or a service. So in a plan to check act, which is a Deming's life cycle, in this waterfall approach, 70% of your time goes into designing, because you need to understand very well. You need to get into the agreements, a service level agreement. You can only get into a service level agreement with a service provider only when you understand quite a few things, isn't it? Right. So a lot of time goes into it. Then output of this go to transition. And in transition, you work on a product. Let us call as web designing, web as a product. And what are the small features that has got you have in a web portal? You have the product description, isn't it? And you need to know the feedback from the customers on that particular product. You need to know the analytics of it. That's another feature. Whoever uses this product also use these products, isn't it? That is to do with analytics. These are all small features. Then add to cart is another feature, and then checkout is another feature. Right? This forms more or less the web. The design. You're all familiar with all this web design and everything, right? So you in the waterfall approach, you got to completely design everything, and then you show it to the stakeholders, and they approve it, or they might say make some corrections. And if some correction needs to be done, then it becomes pretty expensive, isn't it? A lot of time is lost, effort is lost, isn't it? So you have to do a redo. So the cost is very steep if you are to bring in changes, too many changes. But that's a waterfall approach. You get a feedback later on. All right. And this is a waterfall approach. Whereas in an agile way, what happens is you break it down into small features. Like I told you about add to cart, making payment. If you're talking about product description is ready, you show it, you build it up, you show it to the stakeholder, get an input, and bring in correction. So everything happens very quickly. Yeah, so that's the difference between a waterfall approach and an agile way of doing it. All right. Right. So before I go for this, I just want to tell you how IT has evolved. How IT has evolved for the last so many years. See, there's something called, there are 5 levels. There are 5 levels. We are talking about IT which has gone from technology centric to business centric. See, earlier, I'm talking about 20 years back, 25 years back, or even long back, you used IT as a reactive way of doing it. It's all batch processing used to happen. You collect the documents, you enter it, you take a checklist, and then, print the registers and so on. Yeah. So the business did not depend on IT at all. IT at all, but they wanted to computerize their way of working. So it was, it was all reactive, and there was something called incident management is what was established in level 1. What I'm talking about is how IT has evolved from a technology centric to business centric, right? And then level 2, you started controlling on technology. You started kind of availability of components. If you have to deliver the services, you need to have a component, right? For example, you need to have a PC, or you need to have a laptop. It has to be connected to a server. You need to have an application. These are all the components I'm talking about, right? And they also introduced reactive problem management. And one more process to the earlier process of only incident management, and change control was introduced. So automation happened in this level. 3, you started identifying critical services. Every organization has got something called critical services, or it's also called as a vital business function, isn't it? You talk about in a production area, in a manufacturing area, production is a vital business function. Anything happens to production can create a big impact to business. So the focus is also on performance. Yeah, how each and every device is performing, and you're talking about connecting availability, capacity, continuity, security. I mean, disaster recovery planning. All these things started coming. Can you see that how it has evolved? Yeah, it has still not gone into business centric. It is all to do with technology centric, right? And then we talk about provisioning of services. You gather the requirement from all the stakeholders, and you put it into a service level agreement. You monitor the performance of the service that you're delivering, and you started measuring the services. What customer wanted. You have the service level agreement. You mentioned this is my response time. This is my resolution time. You're telling me about I will offer you 99.9% availability. Are you in fact delivering 99.9% availability? So this started. This is how you provide a service provision. You started providing for services, and if you don't meet the customer requirement, then what happens? The service provider is penalized, isn't it? So you started measuring the services, and then you talk about the level 5, where IT started. Had a strategic contribution. It started becoming a business centric. That means IT was no longer reactive. IT was an enabler. If an organization has got a vision, for example, organization might say 5 years down the line, if you are into healthcare, I would want to be within 5 most top 5 healthcare service provider. I should be that. That's a vision, long term. So how do you want to get into within 5 slot in a health sector? Yeah, so I would need IT. I would need IT to help me get into that slot of within 5 in healthcare. So you started banking on IT. Now we talk about so many service providers. So many service providers. Yeah, it is B2B, B2C, and everything. So it is all to do delivering services. You look into IT and ensure that you invest a lot on capacity, availability, continuity, security, and so on. So that sort of a thing has happened. IT has become an enabler. Every organization, they look into IT. Yeah, and some organizations, they depend heavily on IT. Yeah, so IT has become an enabler. It has changed over a period of time, isn't it? So when all this were happening, you had this sort of a waterfall approach. Strategy, design, transition, operation, continuous service improvement, and everything. The processes were there, and every process every process would have a policy, and every process will have a purpose and objective. So that is what was happening, and you were able to deliver. Yeah, this sort of a project, even now, like for example, if you talk about up to level 4, the business would still thrive. There will be less dependency on IT. Yeah, and an IT project can take 8 months, 10 months, 12 months. It can even take more depending on the requirement. but the business did not suffer. But now we are talking about a strategic contribution where part of a business centric, things are changing a lot. And because things are changing, there has to be a new approach. There has to be a new approach. And the new approach is the ITIL 4. Now, what is ITIL 4? You said that ITIL V3. I told you ITIL V3 was not the good practice or the best practice. When if you say that ITIL V3 is a best practice in IT service management, yeah, then why do you need ITIL 4? And it has taken a lot of time for Axelos to come up with this new version. The V3 version, it came in, implemented in 2007. And then there was a slight change, and it was incorporated in 2011. And after that, a lot of, you talk about 8 years, 2019, beginning of 2019, February, Axelos came up with ITIL 4, much awaited ITIL 4. Now, why this? Why do you want to go for this ITIL 4? It's not a small change, it's a big change. Yeah, because the services that are being delivered has become very disruptive. When I say disruptive, I mean, take example, Uber. Uber is into cab services, isn't it? But they don't even own a single car. Airbnb, they are into boarding, accommodation and everything. And they don't own a single hotel accommodation. They don't own a single thing. But they're taking care of all this, booking your hotels and you book your cab. So this is how they operate. So this is what I'm talking about. It's become very disruptive. Yeah, you talk about brick and mortar. You earlier we used to go to a shop to buy, go to a mall, right, to buy, and but now it is everything is online. Talk about Amazon. We talk about Amazon. I'm sure or you would be having your app, Amazon app on your mobile. And if you want anything, you just go through that particular product. You see the review, see how good the product is, and then you decide to buy. You don't even step out of your house. So this is what I'm talking about, disruptive services. And customer demands a lot now. Customer has got the taste that whatever if they place an order, it can be delivered to them within 48 hours or 24 hours, right? And if they don't like it, they can just return it with no questions asked. Can you see that the customer demand has gone up? And the customer would say, well, if I'm not getting within 24 hours, but some other service provider is able to deliver this in 24 hours, then I will go for them. Yeah, just a sec, please, just a sec. Sorry, I hope you're able to see the screen now. I just got an intimation that you're not able to see the other screen. Well, I'm just talking about why ITIL 4, because of a digital transformation. The service provider are able to deliver the services. The service provider are able to deliver the services quickly. And whatever the customer wants, they're able to meet, and much more than what the customer wants, because of the technology. There are a lot of technology available, isn't it? And even more technologies are. And for example, you talk about cloud services, you talk about machine learning, you talk about artificial intelligence, you talk about Internet of Things, blockchain. They're all technology, that's all available. And with this sort of a technology, the service provider are able to harness this sort of a technology and then able to deliver the services to the and so can you see that? There's a lot of change in how the services is going to be delivered. And you can't wait. For example, in a waterfall approach, what has happened is you have a lot of time. You spend a lot of time in design, and then maybe 70% of your time in a project you are doing it in a design, and then you're putting it in transition, and then you are putting it to operations. It takes considerable time, isn't it? At that point of time, the business were able to take the delay because it was not affecting the business. But now A lot of things are happening now quickly, and the customer wants it quickly. And when the customer wants it quickly, they are not compromising. You as a service provider, you don't compromise on inadequacy or less quality. You have to deliver what is to be delivered, and then you ensure that quality is topmost. Yeah, and you do it quickly. You add feature after feature, and you release it, show it to the customer, get feedback. So this is what an agile way of doing it. Yeah, there are manifesto of agile where they talk about we want to deliver a working software rather than comprehensive documentation. One of the manifesto in an agile way, what it says is, comprehensive documentation is to do with the waterfall approach, right? But we don't want this comprehensive documentation. We want whatever documentation that is sufficient. That is what we want to give. And we don't want to spend too much of time on documentation, but we want to focus on working software. So we value that more. We value working software more than comprehensive documentation. That's what they say. There's another manifesto of Agile, which says that making change happen rather than planning for change. Yeah, they want to bring in the changes quickly rather than the following way of bringing in changes. So that is how they want to do it very quickly. So that is where you think about going through an agile way of doing it. Now, this agile is getting quite popular in the sense I'm talking about ITIL V3. Earlier V3 version was waterfall approach or a traditional approach. You talk about PMBOK 5, PMBOK 6 rather. PMBOK 5 was totally waterfall. When I say PMBOK, sorry, I'm talking about project management body of knowledge, managing projects. Yeah, PMBOK 4 up to PMBOK 4 was up to PMBOK 5, I think it's totally waterfall. In PMBOK 6, the project management themselves, they brought in the agile way of doing it, a blend, hybrid. And there's this one coming, another version coming on PMBOK 7. There are a lot of changes are happening. What I'm trying to tell you is, agile is there now. Agile way of doing it is there. Doesn't mean that you can't just discard waterfall approach, because waterfall approach has given a lot of successful projects where customers have been extremely happy about the way the project is done, in time, quality, and so on. But now things are changing, where customer wants it quickly. So that is the reason we are going for ITIL 4. It's a hybrid approach. You can't straight away remove a waterfall approach. It is a blend. You talk about, when I talk about agile, I'm talking about how you build a project. Then once a project is over, then it is operations. And then you still have the same sort of processes, like incident management, problem management, change, catalog, portfolio management, all this in financial management for IT service. All these things are there. Okay. So that is the reason for ITIL 4. Right. Okay. Now, what I'm talking about ITIL 4 is, I'm just going to present you the components of ITIL 4. Now, you have something called 4 dimensions of service management in ITIL 4. That is, you have organization and people. You have information and technology, you have partners and suppliers, you have value stream and processes. These are the 4 dimensions of service management. So organization talks about your format of an organization, the culture that you're following in an organization, your organizational chart, all these things organization takes over, and people working in organization. You will have people with a lot of experience. You will have people joining the organization as freshers, isn't it? It is how how they get involved in an organization, what sort of a training they need to go, orientation, and so many other things. So that is what people. You talk about communication, you talk about leadership, motivation, and all other things. So this is one aspect of 4 dimensions of service management. Then we talk about technology. Technology is there, right? Information and technology. What information is what? Information is any raw data when you process becomes information. But can you take a informed decision on information? No, you can't take. You have to analyze the information, and only then it leads to knowledge, and with knowledge you can take informed decisions. So the data and everything is a starting point. You need to have very good data, a data with integrity, isn't it? And technology, the data, all the data, it resides in a tool, isn't it? Yeah. So technology is there. You talk about different types of technology. I spoke about, we just spoke about machine learning, artificial intelligence. You need to build up a knowledge base, isn't it? You need to know your configuration, your whole IT assets. You need to keep track. All these things you need technology, isn't it? So that's where technology comes into picture. Yeah. So you talk about organization people, you talk about information and technology. And ITIL talks about what are the checklists, what are the areas that you need to look at when you go for different sort of technology and so many other things. Yeah? And partners and suppliers. See, there is no way that you as an organization can work in isolation. You need somebody, you need partners and suppliers. Somebody, you have to outsource an activity to somebody else. So that is where the partners and suppliers comes into picture. You need to do a due diligence in picking up the right partner, right supplier, and so on. So this, when we go through this sort of a training, we talk about elaborately what is a partner, how are they different from suppliers, and so on. What are the due diligence that you do in picking up a partner or a supplier? Yeah, and then we talk about a value stream process. See, you have to deliver a product, you have to deliver a service. If you have to deliver a product or a service, you need to follow a certain process, what is called as a value stream, isn't it? For example, all of you would be very familiar with your retail, isn't it? Retail way of doing it. You've been going to all shops. And what is needed if the cashier has to do a billing? The cashier should have a point of sale, and it should be connected to a scanner, it should be connected to a printer, and then it is connected through a cable, it is connected to a switch, then it is connected to a server. So these are all the, and application, you need to have an application. All these are components. All these are components, and how they are connected with each other in delivering value, isn't it? That's what we talk about value stream. And when you follow this value stream, you got to you got to ensure that you bring in continual improvement. That's very important, and improvement is part of everybody's responsibility. This we talk about it. This we talk about when we talk about 4 dimensions of service management. This is what we do, and you see on topmost and in the background, like you have this other factors that influence in how you deliver, how you manage a project and other things, or getting into operations. Like you need to have a political factor, you need to have an economical factor. Can you see that? Social factor, technological factor, legal factors, environmental factors. See, all these things you need to adhere to. Like if you have to do some sort of a business, you need to respect this external, we call it as an external factors, and it is called PESL. So we explain that what is all these factors, you need to respect all. And if you don't respect anything, well, you would attract a penalty, or you would even have to close down your business and so on. So that's how important it is. Okay. So yeah. So this is this is how we talk about 4 dimensions of service management. Right. Right. And the component is we talk about. These are the components. It's called service value system. And service value system is the heart of ITIL 4. And in service value system, you have these components. You have guiding principles, you have governance, yeah, you have service value chain. Service value chain itself will be explored further, which I'll be talking to you in the subsequent slides. Then we talk about practices, we talk about continual improvement and so on. So this is what is a service value system. And in this service value system, we discuss about the guiding principles. There are 7 guiding principles. I'll just briefly explain to you what is the 7 guiding principles. Why do you need the principles in the first place? Governance. Governance is to do with direction. You have a corporate governance, you have an operational governance, and so on. So governance is the one which gives you directions from down, and that needs to be executed by people down the line, and they monitor whether is it been executed properly or not. So that is to do with your governance. So we talk about value chain practices and say value chain. Well, I will explode on this value chain. And in practices, in ITIL 4 Foundation, you have 15 practices, many practices in the other advanced level. Okay? Then improvement. ITIL 4 focuses on continual improvement. Yeah, so continual improvement is a responsibility of every individual. Every individual organization has to bring in improvement. Yeah, okay, so that's what it is. Well, and another thing, I'm just exploding on this in the sense that what is guiding principles? Why do you guiding principle? It says it guides an organization under any circumstances. And what are the circumstances? The circumstances can be your enhancing your products. You're getting into different services, isn't it? Yeah, or you started off small, where the whole control was centralized, but now you have become big. Now you need to decentralize, isn't it? Can you see that? So there is a change in your organization. Yeah, and all these things, when this happens, the guiding principle helps you in guiding you, bringing changes. So guiding principle that is said, it's enduring, it's universal. So you need to have a guiding principle. So in guiding principle, you have 7 types of guiding principles. That is, the first type is focus on value. Start where you are, progress iteratively with feedback, collaborate and promote visibility, think and work holistically, keep it simple and practical, optimize and automate. Focus on value. Value to whom? To the customer, isn't it? So we talk about what is value. So when you are delivering services to your customer, you should know what the customer wants, isn't it? When I say you, when I'm putting you as a service provider, and you should know what the customer wants. How should they be benefited? So there is something called output and an outcome. There's something called output and an outcome. Now, what is output? Output is the responsibility of the service provider. If we talk about laptop, HP manufactures laptop, servers, computers. The output of HP is, say, HP laptop. I'm just giving an example. So that is an output, isn't it? But the HP should know who are all the customers who would be interested in laptop, and if they use a laptop, what are the benefits that they can get? That they should know. Ultimately, it is the customer who converts, who uses that laptop to their benefit. So that is what an outcome is. I am using this laptop manufactured by HP. HP output is laptop, but I am using it to my benefit. So when I use it to my benefit, I get that is my outcome. I'm happy with the product when I'm able to get the benefit. That is what an outcome is. So you've got to focus on value. That is what the principle talks about. Focus on value. Focus on the outcome of the customer. Start where you are. See, whenever you start, there are many changes will be there. So don't start, but don't discard whatever is there and then start off new. No, don't do that. You've got to spend some time understand what are the practices that you're following, what are the processes, the technology that you're using, and all. It might be something which is delivering value, isn't it? So you got to enhance on that. You've got to enhance on that. Take leverage on what is already there, then try to bring in changes. That is what this one says, start where you are. Yeah, but there might be cases where you have to scrap everything and start new. Well, that should be your last resort. It can't be your first resort. That is what the principle talks about. Start where you are and progress iteratively with feedback. What I said is iterative. What is iterative? Iterative is visiting it again. Whatever you're doing, you're building up a website. You visiting it again and again and again. As you visit it again and again, then you're bringing incremental improvement. You're delivering something, one feature of your website, you're showing it to the customer might come with a feedback and incorporate that feedback, and it should be potentially releasable product, right? So that is what progress iteratively with feedback. Get the feedback quickly. This is what we talk about in agile way of doing it. Collaborate and promote visibility. Collaborate and promote. Yeah, whom are you going to collaborate with? You will be collaborating with all the stakeholders. You need to identify the stakeholders, isn't it? Collaborate with them and promote visibility. And why are you bringing in changes? That has to be made to understand. I mean, all these people down there, everybody in the organization should know why these changes are happening. So you need to communicate in such a way that they know that what are the benefits in this sort of a thing. What is the urgency? This is what collaborate and promote visibility talks about. And think and work holistically talks about think about the solution that you're giving. Think about it holistically. Yeah. So that is think and work holistically, where you integrate with I told you about 4 dimensions of service management. So keep it simple and practical. Always ensure that. Keep it very simple. Keep it practical. Yeah. So that is another sort of principle in ITIL 4. And then optimize and automate. See, don't just automate first. You need to optimize. What is it you're going to optimize? You're going to optimize the process. In the process, there may be non-value add activities. So remove that non-value add activities. Make it effective and make it efficient. Okay, so this is what it is. This is what first optimize the process and then you automate. Then so this is what 7 principles I told you. The reason for guiding principle is they guide an organization on any changes that happens. The guiding principle should still guide an organization. Okay, see practices. These are whatever you see. There are 15 practices. If you have exposure to V3, then you would know that whatever you're seeing here, it's all there, isn't it? Security management, relationship management, supplier management, asset management, all event management, release, incident, problem, change. Can you see that? All are here. But earlier version we used to call it as process. I mean, Axelos used to call it as process, but now they're calling it as a practice. If you recall, if you have done your earlier version of ITIL, V3, service desk was called as a function. Yeah, and now they're calling it as a practice. So there is a difference. There's a difference between a process and a practice. For every process, of course, you need to have input. You need to follow a sequence of activities. That is, if you want to log an incident, you go to, pick up a phone and call up the service desk, or log an incident, or walk up to the service desk to log an incident. This is a process. You can. The thing is, you have to follow it, but don't bypass service desk. How you do it is all right, but don't bypass service desk. And service desk will log an incident, isn't it? And they categorize it, they prioritize it. They follow a sequence. That is a process. Then what is practice? Practice is, well, let us say an incident has been escalated and it has gone to incident management specialist. No, that person is a specialist, and that person might use his own judgment, his or her judgment in resolving it. So the practice ends there, and the practitioner starts doing it on its own. I mean, they use a judgment, wisdom, you can say. It's like that. So that is practice. Okay, so I mean, there are a lot of things I can discuss on this, but then I just want you to give an idea of what are the changes. It's called practices now. Earlier it was process and so on. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing, because we've got all this are for, you're taking care at the operation level. Okay. And yeah, no, this is service value chain. Now, if you look at it, service value chain is a component. If you look at it, service value chain is a component of service value system. Service value system is a bigger picture, and service value chain is part of service value system. Okay, and see, you have these things like you have plan, you have engage, you have improve, obtain and build, design transition, deliver and support. All deliver and support is operations. Design and transition is design and transition in design and transition is one thing here, whereas in earlier version 3, design was one life cycle stage and transition was another life cycle stage. Can you see that? Yeah, so all this, see, for that, a trigger has to be a demand. For example, let us say a change has to happen. Yeah. So what is a trigger? A request for change or a change request is a trigger. Okay, so that becomes a demand here. So you can see that. So this is a demand. Yeah, change request or request for change is a demand. When that happens, well, you engage relevant stakeholders. Output of that can be an input to plan, and output of plan can be an input to design and transition, obtain and build both. Then output of this will be in operations. So all these things happen very quickly, right? And so what happens is, see, ITIL 4 alone can't give you miracle. It can't give you everything. You just say I've implemented ITIL 4 and everything will work fantastic. No, it has, for example, here you can follow the Scrum way of doing it, a project. If you're familiar with Scrum, see, ITIL 4 is aligned to agile way of doing it. Scrum is aligned to agile way of doing it. Now, in my this one, when I deliver this sort of a training, I give a, if you're familiar with Scrum, fantastic. Or I give a brief way of what is Scrum like. So this is all aligned to agile way of doing it. Break it down into small segments, and then start delivering it. You follow a sprint, and the maximum time for a sprint is not more than a month. Can you see that? Yeah. So the whole, if you look into this, the small chunk segments you're broken down in a product or a service, each one should, you should be in a position to deliver them within a month. The sprint is that it can't go more than a month. You can't say, give me 5 more days, let me complete it. No, it doesn't work that way. So within 1 month, you should be in a position to give a potentially releasable product. Yeah. So you follow all that. That's when it delivers value. We're going to talk about this, in an elaborate way. For every plan has got an input, output. Engagement has got an input and output. Similarly, right? And ensure that you deliver the product or a service. You put it into operation. That's when the value is delivered to the. Yeah. So that is to do with the value chain. Then 1 minute. Yeah. So I've spoken about that. Right. Now, so these are the components that we are going to talk about: the service value system, the 4 dimensions of service management, and all guiding principles, the governance, the service value chain. We're going to talk about the 15 practices, and then continual improvement. So with that, I've come to this one of explaining briefly about the product. Now let's get into the certification scheme. See, ITIL Foundation is the beginning of your journey. If you're very serious about, I want to take, you're all into IT. I have seen these questions from many delegates. They ask, hey, I'm a techie. I manage all this technical, this one about taking care of servers, routers, and all these things, database administrator and all. Well, but I want to get into this management area. So will ITIL help? ITIL should help you all that. Yeah, you are very good in technology, but you want to get into the management area. The first thing is, understand all that. Get into this, get yourself certified in ITIL 4 Foundation. Why? Because ITIL 4 Foundation is a prerequisite. Now, if you look at it, your journey starts with ITIL Foundation. Yeah. And you have to pass the exam, you get a certificate. When you get a certificate, then you have something called 2 streams. That is an intermediate level, you can say. Managing professionals, and then you talk about strategic leader you have. And in managing professional, you have, this is a two-day program, like create, deliver, support, drive stakeholders value, high velocity IT using, create, deliver value is your operations. How do you create, deliver value? All this to do with your operations. Drive stakeholder, how do you identify stakeholders, collaborate and promote visibility, so you need to get into the stakeholders aspect. And high velocity IT is using all technology. And so what happens is, these are all two-day program, and you get pass exam, you get certified. You can get a create, deliver, support, you are certified. You can immediately update your profile stating that I'm ITIL 4 Foundation certified, I'm ITIL specialist, it is called as a specialist. I'm a create, deliver, support certified, drive stakeholders value certified, and so on. So you can go through this sort of, all the modules. If you're serious about it, I want to get it. I want to be an ITIL master. That's my ultimate thing. Yeah. So you do that. So you try. Like some people might say, well, I'm all right. I'm okay with managing professional. I don't want to get into strategic leader. Yeah. This is what for the job I'm doing. This is fine with me. So you might think of going for this 4. Yeah, you might. Yeah, so you get certifications and other things. Okay, then you might say, well, I have already in my managing, you become ITIL managing professional certified. When you have these 4 modules, you go through a training and then you take up your exam. When you pass all these 4 modules, you become an ITIL managing professional certified, right? And then let us say you want to do a strategic leader. At that point of time, you don't have to do this strategic direct plan and improve, because you've already done it here, right? And you have to do only one, that is digital and IT strategy. Okay. Now you have the prerequisite to become an ITIL master. That goes through another way of, there will be a conference where a panel of specialists would interview you, and if they find that you're good in your theory knowledge and other things, and you got that experience, experience also counts a lot. You implemented ITIL in your organization and so on, this sort of experience. And if they feel that you're okay, there's no exam here, they would say, well, you're an ITIL master. So very few ITIL masters are there. Okay, so it is that. Or some delegates might think, I don't want to get into managing professional. My thing is, I need to get into the strategic way of. So that's what I'm involved in. So they can take up these 2, strategist leader and plan and other things. Yeah, become a direct plan, improve IT strategy, and then you have a prerequisite. I mean, for prerequisite, you've got to have both for an ITIL master. If you just say, I want to stop here, then you can stop. And then, yeah, this is for, like me, like, for example, they give ITIL, they give you an option. If you have got more than 17, earlier version had got credit. The credit thing has been removed in ITIL 4. If you have got 17 credits in the earlier version, then you don't have to do everything like this. You can take up one paper, yeah, that is called a bridge ITIL managing professional. And if you clear that, it's all this. When you talk about ITIL managing, if you want to do that, then it's a foundation, create, deliver, and support, DSV, HVIT, and all this. So there'll be a question on that, one exam, and if you pass, then, well, you are an ITIL managing professional. Okay. So yeah, and strategic leader, it talks about it just recognize the value of ITIL, not just IT operations, but for all digitally enabled services. Becoming an ITIL strategic demonstrate that the professional has a clear understanding on how IT influences and directs business strategy. As I told you now, IT is enabler to the business. It's business centric, so it can give you a clear understanding. So it integrates all this. Leader integrates strategic plan, improve ITIL, leader, digital, and IT strategic module. Both modules are valuable independently, but both must be completed to obtain the strategic leader. Yeah, you got to to obtain the strategic leader certification. So the ITIL digital IT strategy, it module mandates 3 years of managerial experience. That this one, it's asking for an experience of 3 years. The prerequisite for everything is ITIL foundation. Okay, yeah, this is what I told you, managing professional. Well, with that, I have done this one of introducing you to ITIL 4. I told you the difference between earlier version and this version. The earlier version followed a waterfall approach, and now we are talking about a blend, that is waterfall and the agile way of doing it. And the business are changing, customers are demanding. Yeah, earlier we were talking about time to market. Now the question is time to value. How quickly can I get value from the product I'm using? Time to value. So that's where the way you're delivering IT services has changed, and because of that, you need to have a robust framework. And ITIL framework is there from the 80s, if you see, and it's one of the popular IT service provision, framework. All right. Thank you. Have a nice day, nice year ahead.